She was at once a traditional first lady and a power player. Nancy Reagan said as much herself at a 1985 luncheon, shown years later in this PBS documentary.
I see the First Lady as another means to keep a president from being isolated. I talk to people, they tell me things, and if something is about to become a problem, I'm not above calling a staff person and asking about it. I'm a woman who loves her husband, and I make no apologies for looking out for his personal and political welfare.
She was born Anne Frances Robbins in New York in 1921, the only child of a salesman and an often absent actress mother. After graduating from Smith College, she became an actress herself, billed as Nancy Davis, taking the last name of her adoptive father. She landed a role on Broadway and then went to Hollywood. There, she met Ronald Reagan in 1951.
He was unlike any actor I'd ever known.
She recalled her initial impressions of Reagan for that PBS documentary in 2011.
Never talked about himself. Had a whole world out there that he was involved with. He was very appealing to me, good looking and attractive. I just wanted to know more about him.
They were married in a small ceremony in 1952. It was Ronald Reagan's second, and they went on to have 2 children, Patty and Ron. On screen, they even starred opposite one another in 1957's Hellcats of the Navy. Then, after years in the movies and television, the couple turned to Republican politics. Ronald Reagan was elected governor of California in 1966 and re-elected 4 years later. In 1980, he won the White House in a landslide, defeating a sitting Democrat, Jimmy Carter.
I, Ronald Reagan, do solemnly swear.
The following January, he took the oath as the 40th president, and Nancy Reagan became First Lady. But crisis struck after just 69 days in office. The new president narrowly survived being shot in an assassination attempt in downtown Washington.
I've never seen anybody so white, really white. That was when he said, "Honey, I forgot to duck."
As Mrs. Reagan remembered, the country did not realize at first how close a call it was.
All people were being told was, "Honey, I forgot to duck." You know, that's what they were being told, so they obviously just assumed that he was okay. He wasn't okay. I almost lost him.
After that, the First Lady became even more protective of her husband, and she played a pivotal role during his 8 years in the Oval Office, serving as a sounding board and weighing in on major personnel decisions.
She was the indispensable person in his political success, save and except he himself.
James Baker was Reagan's White House chief of staff.
She had wonderful political antenna. She had a good feel for politics, and she could be very instrumental and helpful. Not that he would accept her judgment all the time, because he wouldn't, but she could nudge and gently cajole and find a way to move him forward.
In fact, she privately helped nudge her husband toward a historic policy shift, a warming in relations with the then Soviet Union. At the same time, the First Lady drew notice and sometimes criticism for her glamorous tastes, for the costs of renovating and redecorating the executive mansion, and for lavish entertaining in the midst of a recession. But she also used her platform to speak out on social issues. Her major initiative began in 1982, the Just Say No drug awareness campaign. Mrs. Reagan ultimately traveled nearly 250,000 miles speaking out against drug abuse.
Nobody wanted me to do that. They said, "It's a real downer. You don't want to do that." I said, "Yes, I do." Because by that time, I was finding out from home, a lot of my friends' children had gotten involved, and many of them had committed suicide.
After 2 terms, the Reagans left office in January 1989, returned to California, and retired in the affluent Los Angeles neighborhood of Bel Air. In 1994, in a letter to the nation, the former president revealed he had been diagnosed with Alzheimer's. After that, he remained largely in seclusion.
Not many people saw him at that point. I didn't let them see him. I didn't want them to have that memory of him like that. And I knew he wouldn't want them to see him like that.
During those years, the former First Lady made a rare public appearance at the 1996 Republican National Convention in San Diego.
The love and affection from thousands of Americans has been and continues to be a strengthening force for Ronnie and me each and every day. We've learned, as too many other families have learned, of the terrible pain and loneliness that must be endured as each day brings another reminder of this very long goodbye.
Former President Reagan died in 2004 at the age of 93. After a state funeral in Washington, he was laid to rest in Simi Valley, California, on the grounds of his presidential library. With his passing, Nancy Reagan became an advocate for stem cell research and finding a cure for Alzheimer's. She also labored to preserve her husband's legacy at his presidential library. Their son, Ron, assessed his mother's own legacy in 2010.
I hope that history remembers her as somebody who is dedicated to the person she loved more than anybody else on earth. That's what her life has been about, and she did her very best to make sure that he could do his very best.
Nancy Reagan spent her closing years at her Bel Air home, monitoring her husband's legacy until the end.